Hey, Catalyst Women, this is Danielle Wingate, and I am so excited and honored to have a dear friend of mine, Tam Hodge, joining us today for a great feature. She's an amazing woman. I actually got to work with her husband, Brent, years ago at a church in Nashville, and you'll have to stay tuned for the follow-up story of how they've impacted my life and even our marriage. So I'm super excited. So, Tam, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I was just thinking when I was listening to you do the intro, we met in Nashville on Central Standard Time, and now here we are on the West Coast, Pacific Standard.
True.
We're both. I mean, I'm just going to follow you everywhere. That's what I'm going to do.
I'm okay with that. If Chris and I can follow in y'all's footsteps as a married couple and then raise our kids as well as y'all have done, or even half as well as y'all have done, we will be great.
Oh, you're sweet.
We will be great. But no, it is really fun. So she and Brent and their two kids just moved out to California, and we'll have the link and everything below for you guys to check out for a new church plant and just an exciting mission that God's called them to. So definitely make sure to check that out. But what I'd love to do is just kind of dive into a little bit of your story and just this whole journey that God has you on. So if you don't mind, just kind of tell us where were you born? Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Well, I was born actually in Southern California. I was born in Monterey Park, California. Grew up mostly here, and I think I moved up to Oregon. I was like 19 or so, but kind of did a little zigzag in between then. That's a wild story. It's all in my book. It's wild. But so I am an unapologetic beach girl. I'm a West Coast at heart. I love being back. Actually, when we knew we were moving back, when we still lived in Nashville, we thought we were going to Huntington Beach area, Orange County. So I was like, yay, God's letting us go back to the beach. And he's like, no, I'm actually going to put you in the middle of like LA, Hollywood. I'm like, no.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Surely you've misunderstood my prayer requests. But anyway, he knows.
He does. He does. So did you have siblings? What was your family dynamic like growing up?
Oh, yes, I have siblings. I have two half sisters. No. 1, 2, 3 half sisters, 2 half brothers, and 2 foster brothers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
what was life like growing up? Like, did you live with them, near them?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. Our family's pretty interesting, very intense. I had a very intense upbringing. So there was just, I think I spent a lot of my childhood worrying, feeling very overwhelmed because there's just a lot of uncertainty, a lot of abuse. My mama did not physically abuse me, but there was a lot of physical abuse in my family. So I mean, just oh gosh, from the time I was a little girl, my first memory, I was 3 years old. I walked into my parents' bedroom. This is before my dad left. And I walked in on him, beating her. And it's my first memory. And it just kind of stayed that way. I'm a firm believer. I know women stay in those kind of relationships because they feel that's all they're worth. And it breaks my heart when I hear others who are in healthy relationships say, why don't they just leave? But why don't, do they think that little of themselves? Well, no, they don't. They're just afraid, and that's their normal. That's all they know, and they just can't imagine. And then, of course, they're under the thumb of this, manipulation and abuse of power, and just they live in fear. And so I think that was that pattern. So there was just a lot of continual abuse. Yeah. So I watched my mama get hurt a lot, and that was so hard. I endured several myself, lots of different types of abuse. And I have the scar on my arm right down here. It goes right down there. Oh, and I also have a fuzz. And I look at it, and every time I look at it, I remember how I got it. But I also remember, it reminds me I also survived it. And, it's not an open wound. It's a healed scar, but it's still there, but it's healed, and that's where I am at right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, well, I can't imagine. And I'm sorry. Like, I can't imagine as a new mama of a little kid, like little girl, like that being her first memory.
Right. And you know what? It's funny you say that, because when I was 10 years old, I was in the 5th grade. I had taken a really, really tough beating, and it was all over, and he told me to, just to go to my room. And I did. I went to my room, and I took a bunch of my blankets and I put them on the bottom of my closet floor, which is kind of ironic because I'm sitting in my son's closet right now doing this interview. But I laid a bunch of blankets on the floor, and on my way in, I also grabbed a little photo of my mom that I had on my nightstand, and I put it next to me. And I was crying, and I remember thinking at that moment, someone like me right now, another little girl, probably has it worse than I do. And I don't know. I mean, that is an only God moment. There is no reason why my 10-year-old mind should have
processed that. Like,
no. Yeah. And so, in an odd way, because it broke my heart that was probably true, but it also brought me comfort,
perspective.
Yeah. And I really believe, God just swooped down and grabbed me way back then, even before I even recognized my need for him. He's been so very sweet to me.
Yeah. Also, journeying kind of through that, what are some defining moments that you feel like, maybe in middle school and high school that really kind of started kind of directing you to the journey? Even maybe defining the place that you're at now, because I know that you have you're a speaker and an author. And so I do want to tie into, like the fullness of how God's brought you through it.
Yeah.
But are there other defining moments, maybe other people that really kind of defined that path that you that led you into that dark, challenging season?
Right. Well, there's a couple things. You mentioned perspective. I love my mom, and I do believe she did the best she could, or with what she knew how, and just for what she knew how, she did the best she could. And I'm grateful that I'm here to even have a story, so I'm very grateful. But even though so much was allowed, or maybe even not known to happen to us as kiddos, mostly my brother and myself growing up, my older brother, my mom taught me the biggest lesson. And it's actually it's a funny story. It's not funny. See, that's the thing. I find humor in the most strangest things, but
that's good that you can laugh about it, though. Like, it's better than just crying about it and paralyzed by.
Well, and this story, what I'm about to tell you is why I can laugh about it. I'm going to give you the condensed version. I was in 3rd grade. I woke up one morning. It must have been a weekend or something, because I wasn't rushing for school. And but I remember waking up that morning worried, because I often was, because the night before I had heard a lot of commotion and chaos and stuff going on. So oftentimes I wouldn't know what to find. Would my mom be there? What is she going to look like? I just hated waking up sometimes. So I woke up. It's complete quiet in the house. I open my door. I walk down the hallway. I see nothing. I look to my right in the living room. There's nothing, nobody, no sound, nothing. I go to my left, and there was a big square kitchen. Well, it was big to me. It was probably 4 square feet, but I was just a little girl. But I peek over, and across the room, across the kitchen, was my mom standing at the kitchen sink looking out the window. So her back is to me. And I remember when the curtains were drawn, and I remember it being really cloudy, a little rainy that day. And it stuck out to me in my memory because it was in Southern California. So we didn't have a lot of those types of days. So those stand out. So I was still standing in the doorway, and my mom must have sensed me. And she turned around quickly, and she had on dark sunglasses, and they were super big. It was in the 70s, so it was big glasses, big hair, and I thought, oh, she has lost her ever-loving mind. I mean, what happened last night? My goodness. Oh. And I'm thinking that, and she takes a deep breath, and she walks over to me, and she squats down, and she gets on eye level, and she puts her hands out, and she firmly grabs my shoulders, and she pulls me into her, and she goes, Tam. And I can see at that point, because I'm close enough, her eyes are just black and blue and swollen. And she pulls me, she goes, Tam, I want you to remember something. In this life, you're going to have a lot of hard times. There are going to be scary moments. People are going to be mean to you. People are going to hurt you. But sometimes you got to push through that, and you just have to find the funny. Promise me you will find the funny, because there's always funny to be found. And I was like, yes, Mama. And she goes, now, don't you think these glasses look great on me? I've been looking for a reason to wear them, and we, it kind of masked it a little bit, literally, but but I understood, I received that, and it has stuck. It stuck with me, and that's my lens, not to make fun of, but just to know, gosh, it's not all doom and gloom. It can't be. Yeah. So that's a very condensed version.
Oh, man, I admire Mom for that. I don't know if I would have had the strength to even mask it like that.
No, she's a strong woman. She endured a lot.
Oh, man. Well, talk to me a little bit, or tell us a little bit about growing up, obviously, in that atmosphere. Mm-hmm. You didn't have probably a godly man even in the house to model for you, and just any male figure to probably even like pour into you, protect you, like anything like that. And I mean protection from, well, a physical sense, but also in an emotional sense.
Right.
Because all of us girls, like whatever relationship we have with our dad, we all desire to be known, to be loved, to be accepted, pursued, and protected.
Oh.
And that's a whole separate call. So did you just meet Brent kind of like off the bat, and like he just swoops you off your feet, and y'all have this amazing like marriage? Like, no, marriage is amazing. I'm just going to tell you. So I'm just like, let us into a little bit of that world of what that journey looks like, of how y'all met. And
how we met? Oh, well, we were 19 when we met. It was summer of 1990. And I had just moved back to Southern California because I was actually living in Knoxville, Tennessee. Okay. Right. Knoxville's the east one, right?
It is.
Okay, yeah, that's where I was.
You got Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville.
That's it, right. So I was living in Knoxville, and again, this is all in my first book. But I had married a man 15 years my senior there, and it was a typical. Like you said, I didn't have father figures. I had a few very, very protective uncles that adored me, so I did have that kind of influence. But I didn't have a father figure, and here this guy comes along, and he had an attraction and affection for me, and I thought, this is it. This is my chance to be protected and pursued and loved and valued and all those kind of things, and I was just desperate for that. So I jumped into this relationship, jumped into this marriage, and at about 5 days into our marriage, I do believe he had a mental illness, but he kind of lost it and held me hostage in our apartment for a few days and at gunpoint for one of the days. And it was one of the most traumatic events of my whole life. And I had been through a lot, either by choice or not, but that was, it still takes my breath when I think about having survived it.
Yeah.
But I ended up being able to escape. It's a wild story, but the day I left, he took his life. But
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was that moment that got me back out to Southern California, and I got a job, and a gentleman at the job started inviting me to church, and it's all a long story, but anyway, I ended up getting into church, and I was like, wow, they don't want me there. I'm a hot mess. I was afraid like it would like blow up the minute I walked through the doors. I mean, because
I've heard that from so many people that they're like, if I walked in and if they knew who I was, like,
I'm like, I don't want to put anyone else in jeopardy. If I walk in, will people lose their salvation? Yes. So yeah, I was like, I don't want that
straight lie. I'm just telling y'all, it's a straight lie.
It is. And the enemy knew then what God was going to do in my life, how he was going to redeem it, and how I would go from victim to victor and trapped to completely released and freed. And he knew. And so, yeah, all those lies, boom, 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 go up. And anyway, I eventually go, and that's when I met Brent, this perfect, cute little California tan boy. And when you think about it, I mean, I was just widowed in June of that summer. We met in July, started dating in August, got engaged in October. I became a believer that August. Yeah. And then we got married a year later. And it's wild how fast that happened. And again, it's only God. God totally renewed and just, except for one thing in my life that I kept from him for a long time. But he knew all my story. I couldn't believe I was sitting across from him and I'm telling him my story. And he's like, yeah, I love you. I'm like, yeah, you're out your mind.
Yeah, like,
did you hear me?
Wow.
But he's a good guy. He's a good guy. He was my Jesus with skin on.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, I mean, as we've talked previously, Brent was really the way that he pursues you currently still, even in your marriage, the way he always talked about you at work, and just the way that he would respond to you and to the kids when they would come, that really modeled for me what I wanted in a husband one day. And it really challenged my lens to think, is that what a godly husband looks like? Is that how they love their wife? Is that how they pursue the hearts of their kids? Because if so, then the guy I'm with is not that. And, and I waited, and thankfully because of his and a few other examples, so yeah, he is, I mean, y'all are a great, great team. So, do you mind sharing with us just what that was that you kept from him? Why?
Yeah. No, I don't mind at all. It's so much part of my story. But so I had taken in a lot of secrets into our marriage, revealed several of them, except one. And I didn't tell him about this big secret until 1994. It was, let me see, April, May, June, July, August. It was September of 1994. Our firstborn, Cassidy, was 5 months old at the time. And I had been struggling with just not forgiving myself and believing that God could ever forgive me for past abortions that I had had as a teenager. Okay. So I kept that kind of hidden, from people, but not from the Lord, obviously. But so I thought I was doing really good with it, until I got pregnant with Cassidy. And when I got to the 11th week of pregnancy, and then again the 13th week of pregnancy, those were the weeks that I had my abortions, I realized quickly I was not well. I had a lot of work to do. And it was at that moment that I began believing, of course, this is the enemy, chipping away at my thoughts. At that moment, I started believing that, God's going to take her from me as a punishment. I'm not going to be able to carry out this pregnancy. And so then you can imagine then when I was 26 weeks pregnant, I went into preterm labor with her. And so I thought, this is it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, and I kind of resigned to it. I was like, all right, Lord, I deserve this.
Wow.
I don't like it, but I deserve this.
Yeah.
So got on the medications, had to go in the hospital a lot, get hooked up, get all the drips and stop labor and bed rest and all this kind of stuff. But we ended up only having her 1 month early, which was a miracle.
Wow.
So she did good, but even then I remember when she was born thinking, okay, it's not over yet. He can still take her. And what a great time for him to take her now that I can see her, So I had decided at that moment when she was born, I didn't want to look at her. I didn't want to.
And Brent still didn't know.
He had no idea. So I was just trying to work. That was my way of working through it,
Yeah.
So, and it was just, I sunk into a horrible, horrible depression. I was actually afraid of hurting her and myself when she was just a few weeks old. And that's a whole other journey. But at about 5.5 months old, when she hit about that age, I was alone with her one afternoon, and I was walking down the hallway and my knees gave out. And I went from just walking to flat on my face on the ground. Yeah. And it was one of those moments. It was a God-filled, holy moment. And on my way down, I knew, sorry. Can you hear me?
For life, yeah. That's all good.
I knew that this was my coming out moment. This was the moment that God was going to have it out with me. And I remember still laying there on the ground. I was face down crying because I knew what he was asking me to do. He was telling me, it's time to tell Brent, it's time for you to get over this. You have to forgive yourself. The hardest person to forgive is yourself.
Yeah.
I believe that. It was easy for me, not easy. I mean, it was easier for me to forgive my abusers, way easier than to forgive myself, because I knew so much more of the why behind it. Yeah. And that, honestly, it disgusted me, and I was so disappointed in me. So, but I remember yelling to God out loud, Lord, I am not telling my husband. And I'm screaming. I was like, I'm not going to do it. You can't make me. And I said, can't we keep the peace? And Daniel, I heard him. He said, Tam, this is peace. Look at you. Wow. You are a mess. You can't even breathe. You have snot and tears all over your face. And that is what peace looks like to you. That is why I sent my son. You've got it messed up. And it was just, and he just kept throwing them at me, throwing those truths at me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't defend myself because he's already defended me, and he's trying to get that into my skull. And so I was like, okay, you win. And I remember I got up from the floor and I look over, and Cass was this chubby little roly-poly thing. And I guess she was out laying in the living room. I don't know, but she had rolled her way into the hallway next to me at that point. She's only 5.5 months old. I don't know how she did it. And I remember as I got up, I looked down at her, and God told me, she is why you have to confess. You have to. This is to break the chains in the cycle. Wow. in the dysfunction of all you've ever known. It's going to start now. The breaking starts now, and the freedom is going to start now. And I'm like, yes, sir. Okay. So that night is when I told my husband, and it was a very, very long, arduous process, and a lot more tears, and all my fears of there's no way that he is going to still love me after this. There's no way he is going to even trust me with his child after this. These are my thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
And after hours and hours of just rocking back and forth and trying to talk through my tears, he just, Brent, he's one of the most stable, patient people. I mean, and he's gone through a lot, especially recently, and he's just still maintains his, all right, got to just roll with the punches, So that was him that night. And after hours, I finally just go, okay, I just got to tell him. And I told him, and he didn't say anything right away, and that scared me because I thought, all right, this is it.
Yeah.
Packing up and leaving. And
it's almost like you think if they knew everything, they would leave. I wouldn't be good enough. They wouldn't love me.
Right. It's exactly what I thought. It's a lie I believed for years. And but he finally just took a breath and leaned into me and said, Tam, after all of that, after all these hours, that's what you needed to tell me? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, I thought you were going to tell me you murdered somebody. And it is funny. And I remember going, oh, but I did. And that's why this is so hard for me. And it was at that moment I saw it in his eyes, in his expression. He understood me fully for the very, very, very first time ever. He'll tell you today, now I understood. He immediately understood why I responded to certain things some ways, or, why I reacted, blah, 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 because I gave him that night the gift of fully knowing me. And that was a gift I had taken from him for so long. And it changed.
I'm sure it was his desire from day one was to fully know you.
Absolutely. So, and that was the beginning of my journey to freedom. And that's when I learned, oh my goodness, confession brings freedom. I had the power and the key to unlock that the whole time. I remember going, oh my gosh, this is the best feeling ever. The next day I got on the phone, I called my 5 best girlfriends. I'm like, you're not going to believe what I have to tell you, but it feels so good, and I told him, and then it ended up like one of the girlfriends had the same story and she had never told anybody. And that's when it clicked. I have to tell my story.
Yeah.
I have to be honest and vulnerable and let it out there. And I have to show people what God can do. And even though he may allow seasons of hurt and darkness and fear and guilt and shame, he may allow it. And he does. He does allow it.
Yeah.
But I look at that whole journey of my life right now, and I actually consider it an honor that he saw me fit and strong enough to partner with him to do what I get to do today.
Yeah.
My journey is my gift. And I always say that the pains of my past lost their sting when I realized their purpose. And its purpose is simply to share my story and share hope and give other women permission to put their brave shoes on, zip up their brave britches and go, that's in me too. Yeah. Because Jesus lives in me. I can do this. And that's my life's mission. That's it.
That's so good. Oh my gosh. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing, and if there's either ways that women can contact you for more information. You haven't shared the title of your book yet, which obviously of course is featured below, but just if people want to know what to look for. And
so my first book is And Now I Choose, a story for those who believe they have no choice, because that's what breaks my heart. Women believe they don't have a choice. At some point in our journey, we're born strong. We're born fighters. I mean, we fight for breath the minute we're born.
That's good.
That's in our soul. Our spirit longs to go, okay, I'm here. Let's do this thing. And that's how, we come out the gates that way. And at some point that's taken away. or we exchange it for something else.
Yeah.
But that doesn't remove that fact and that truth about you and how God intended you to live. So it's still there. Sometimes you just got to put in the hard work to go back in and dig in and find it, you know?
Yeah.
So that was a tangent, a bunny trail. Sorry, but I
Have
just
a good one.
needed to say that. So yeah. Oh, about we believe we have no choice. Yeah. So, and I've written a couple other books as well. A children's book, which is actually my favorite, but mostly because it has artwork in it. So, yeah. Yeah, and I'm a speaker. I love, that's my very, very favorite thing to do is go to women's conferences. I speak a lot right now for pregnancy resource centers, typically for their annual galas, for their fundraising and stuff. And so that's been great, but I love speaking. And I just started a coaching thing. I've been a coach for years, and I've always helped women, but it had gotten so busy. I had to organize a little bit more. And so my best friend convinced me to start it. So I do Choose Freedom Coaching, and you can get more info on that too as well. So yeah, that's what I do.
Well, good. I just have just a few more quick questions as we're just kind of wrapping up. But if you had to encourage somebody today to choose joy, or like practically, other than wearing large sunglasses, in those tough seasons, are there any best practices or just like tips even that you have? Because you guys are in a new season as well that I'm sure isn't necessarily easy, but God's called you guys back to California, and y'all are doing exciting things.
Yeah. We're in a really interesting season. And it's a season that God continually reminds me that I have a lot to learn. And I think we should always come at life like this, like open-handed, like receiving, and not so much white knuckling everything. And so God's reminding me that I am a white knuckler by nature, because this season has just brought a lot of uncertainty. We're doing, we're planning a church of sorts here, but not a building. We're kind of going to the people, the disenfranchised, the marginalized, just, for their lifestyles or whatever. And we're doing our best to go back to just the Jesus model and meeting them where they are and just showing up, just showing up. Like, what's your story? I think those are 3 most important words you can ever say to somebody is, what's your story? Oh gosh, that's so inviting. That's so like, because like you said earlier, we all just want to be known, right? Mm-hmm. He created us for that community. So, and we lose that. So, but for choosing joy, and just choosing to adopt just a healthier perspective, I would encourage any woman who's struggling just to pray every day, God, help me align my eyes and my heart with yours today. Mm-hmm. And it may not always be easy. I mean, yesterday I was Skyping with my mother-in-law, who is my hero. I love that woman to pieces. And I told her, I said, I have to pray that.
I love my mother-in-law as well, but I know that is not the majority.
It's not. It's not.
And if you're watching this, I do love you.
That's awesome. Well, I told her that is my regular prayer. And I was like, I prayed it 13 times already today. Because my fears and my worries, they plop right in because that's what I gravitate to. And that's so sad for me because God has done so much for me. But yet I still go, no, I don't worry.
It's totally human nature though. Like, but it's so encouraging to hear, like that there's other people that are walking that as well.
Right. I just don't beat yourself up for being human, and if you are a worrier, if you are, whatever, or you're trying to make changes in your life, don't beat your heart up either. It has to get used to beating differently, so things take time. There's, you have to give yourself a transitional grace.
Yeah. So good.
And you don't have to make apologies for it. It's between you and the Lord, just let it be that.
Yeah. Man, that's so good. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, your evening, just to chat with me, man. What a treat to be able to like see you, even though we are on the same coast. And
You look so beautiful.
oh, you are so sweat. I'm 8 months pregnant, so
you're glowing.
Oh,
You're glowing. I was glowing when I was pregnant, but that was sweat. You're like glowing.
It may be. There's no AC in most Seattle homes, which is crazy from a Texan and Southern girl right here. So anyway, but thank you. I do appreciate that. And I love you guys, and y'all have just been such a great influence, and I love following along with your journey. And ladies, Catalyst Women, you want to follow along with her journey. Go read her book, go check out the links that are shared below, and just engage with her. Her heart is amazing. Her heart is for you. And man, this is just the tip of the iceberg of her testimony, their journey, and God's just doing some exciting, amazing things in their life. So make sure to follow along. So
yeah, and I hope they reach out. I would love to talk to anybody.
Perfect.
Yes, please do.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure to get all that contact information out. Please give your family a hug for me. And Catalyst Women, y'all have a wonderful rest of your week, and we can't wait to catch up with you soon.